Hey, True Believers. Chris Mack coming at you with X-Force number 9. And even though I still believe that these X-Men that are part of this new Dawn of X line are pod people of their former selves, the plot that Benjamin Percy is working on here is actually entertaining. So let's go ahead and jump into it. But the reason that I say these are pod people is, yes, characters like Daken and Gabby, for the most part, are their humor, and Logan's can be to an extent morbid. But I kind of feel like it went a little too far. It's interesting and it's horrific, so heads up. But I could not see Logan and Gabby particularly doing this. I could see Daken doing this, but or Daken, however you pronounce it. But you see Wolverine slam a drink, and it's like Russian roulette. You see ready, and then Gabby's like ready, and Daken bring it. So they spin the bottle, and then you see everybody like Toad, Jamie Madrox, I think just his name's Healer, I can't remember his full name, Doug Ramsey, surprisingly, and then Goldballs. I can't believe they actually went with that name. And then I think that, I don't know if that's supposed to be Jean or Siren, I'm not 100% sure. But you just see Gabby saying, I got $50 on the Knucklehead. And then, me. And what the that is intense. Now, the artwork helps with that kind of that old ultra violence, to quote Alex there from Clockwork. But Jesus, who sits around and does that for fun? But then again, this is supposed to be, you know, the killers of Krakoa, so, and they have healing factors. They don't need the resurrection protocols. But good God Almighty, that is intense, and they're laughing about it. These are Logan's kids. Daken biological, Gabby, just like with Laura, clones of himself. And Jean's even just like, why don't you try doing something nice with them sometime? What are you talking about, Jeannie? That's exactly what we're doing. It's just, geez Louise. See, this is good bonding. This is what fun looks like. Now, I don't know if Logan's being sarcastic, but let me kind of tell you again why, to me, this is a 180. If you all read Rick Remender's Uncanny X-Force, Daken was one of the main antagonists. They had kidnapped Evan, I think is his name, the Kid Apocalypse, and they were going to train him into Insabanur. And Wolverine has just had enough of the blood and death that Daken had done. And so what he ends up having to do is he drowns his own son in a puddle of just like nasty mud. And this haunts him. Now, a few years later, like 10, 12 years later, they're slicing each other's brains open for fun. So that's what I meant by these are pod X-Men. So when I read this, I have to switch off what I know and has been ingrained in me for the last, umpteen, 15 plus years of what the X-Men are supposed to be, and just say, okay, these are just biker gang, or, this is Jack Howlett instead of James Hill, just something that's not the X-Men. And Jean even says, she goes, sometimes I feel like X-Force has screwed up my internal compass. It's harder to know what's right and wrong anymore. And that just kind of screams what Krakoa is in general, because even though this is an awesome splash page, kind of like what Liam Sharp did in the Green Lantern book, season 2 that we went over, it's kind of cool seeing everyone unwind, though it is a little weird to see Havoc laughing like that, or to a greater degree, to actually see Apocalypse having a drink in this bar with Cyclops and Jean, or Forearms, just like, what's going on? And then it was kind of a nice surprise to see Dazzler. It's odd for me, and especially Penance, who's the more quiet type. So artwork, great. Characterization, not so much, because like I said, just these do not feel like the X-Men. So I have to switch off that these are our merry mutants that we've known for years. So this is called Greener Pastures. I do want to go over this part before we talk about who made the book, because Sage is talking to Domino. And if you remember from issue 8, I didn't show it in my review because I didn't want to spoil it, but she died. And Sage says, may I ask what it felt like to wake, what it felt like to be resurrected? And Domino's like, it felt like waking up with a hangover, but in a good way. Like Saturday morning hangover after a solid 12 hours of sleep, sun on your face, coffee brewing. And then Sage is like, I'm sorry to pry, but the nightmare you've been living, gone. I don't know how to explain it except that it might as well have happened to someone else. And then Sage, is kind of a living computer to a degree, so she goes, pause. You're implying your memories of South Korea have been erased? I'm aware of what happened, but yeah, basically, that slot in my brain is blank. I don't mean to be contrary, but that doesn't calculate. You told me it must have been what I wanted, okay? We're supposed to choose our best selves, right? Guess I decided I didn't need all that poison inside me. Now, if you remember when she died in issue 8, if you read it, so spoilers if you haven't, Colossus is embracing her, and she goes, I want to remember everything. Promise me. I'm not going to die unless you promise me that I'll be able to remember what happened these last few days, because, Domino was skinned alive. And it was screwing with her because people were using her flesh to infiltrate Krakoa. It's what caused the assassination of Professor X at the beginning of this series. And so she had a lot of issues going on, her and Colossus both, and they leaned heavily on one another, and it made for some great dramatic writing. Now we read this panel with Sage. Something don't add up. And I wonder if we're going to build to that, because sadly that's all we touch on for the most part here. Now, who's working on this book? This is Benjamin Percy writing, which I hate to a degree, but from what I understand is Hickman's leaving X-Men after 20 or something like that, issue 20. I kind of feel like Percy could take on the X line and it would be excellent, because I really like the way he writes for the most part. Joshua Cassera doing the art, which is actually beautifully, splendidly done. Dean White colors. VC's Joe Carmanga doing the lettering. Everyone else that's working on the book. X-Men was created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. Wolverine was created by Len Wein. And then we see Black Tom talking about how he's having a hard time dealing with Krakoa. He says, I'm in the island and the island's in me. I need to unplug. I can't take all these thousands of voices in my head. And when I did the review of the figure, I was talking about how Black Tom back in the day was very debonair, like Sinister. And now modern, just like with Sinister, it's just very random, almost to like under the brink of insanity. And it's just very out of character for them. But I want to bring this up because it brings up some really interesting things that we'll go over here in a minute. Now, we're not going to worry about reading. So Beast tells the team that they have a mission in Terra Verde or whatever it is. And here's the last part we touch on with Domino. Wolverine says, you look good, Dom. But that ain't the same as feeling good. I'm fine. Better than fine. I can finally sleep. And I can actually go 5 minutes without thinking about getting skinned alive. Isn't that a good thing? Was under the impression that you were going to take all that pain and weaponize it. Do you really want me to be like you? I want you to be you. That's all. You're acting like you're fixed. But you were never broken. It's true. Very true. Now, there's kind of a funny moment that happens with Kid Omega, which I don't want to give away. But Terra Verde, as you can see, things are not as well as they should be. Beast was talking about how communications and everything had ended, and we can see why. This looks very terrifying, and you start to learn some things about this island, which again, it should have been shown, not told, or a couple panels here and there, but not. I hate these reading pages. It's like if I want to do that, I'm going to read a novel. But here, this is where we start to see that Hank McCoy is not the Hank McCoy we know. Like, I honestly think, and it wouldn't surprise me if they do this down the road, that they reveal that the beast that they actually resurrected, if he's ever been resurrected, is not the 616 Hank McCoy, but the Dark Beast from the Age of Apocalypse. Because we start seeing all these, like, eugenic mixed monsters, very well artistically done. And they say, what isn't Beast telling us? So this is not how Hank is. We all know him as the fun-loving, bubbly beast that smart and can quip like Spider-Man. But, Beast comes to Black Tom, who's noticed that he's been a little bit off his rocker, and he's like, I'm here for you. Now, before we go, there's one thing I do want to reference in this reading panel. If you don't read it, it kind of kills it, so let me go back real quick. Let me see if I can find it real quick. See what I mean? Instead of just being able to point stuff out, it's like frustrating having to dig stuff out. Here we go. So Hank, in researching Terra Verde, was talking about how the plants must be sated if they're to be obedient. In this way, Terra Verde bears some resemblance to Krakoa, which requires the consumption of 2 mutants each year if it's to thrive. What the hell? When did the X-Men start getting into sacrifice? I mean, seriously, this is not the X-Men. Now, the reason I wanted to point that out is because after reading that, we see Beast saying, that's why I'm here for you. And then we start starting to feel the tension where Tom is talking about how he needs to unplug from the island for a while. We see Quentin running in terror. Beast says, if I saved you, then perhaps you could return the favor. We under attack? We're not sensing anything but a splitting skull ache. We drank a swimming pool of rum punch last night. And then Beast kind of hoists Black Tom over his shoulder and he goes, then consider this your lucky day because I'm sending you out into the field. And then we just see Quentin in fear and terror. Why? Read the book. So if I switch off my brain and I say this isn't the X-Men and that this is sort of like a horror comic or something akin to like Predator, then I can appreciate it, because to me, even though the only person out of these three that really are close to their original selves is Quentin. I don't know. It is, they're like pod people. I mean, yes, Logan is a very tough SOB, but he would never sit there and play roulette with his kids, especially after what Remender set down in Uncanny X-Force. Domino, yeah, she's a killer, but she doesn't always want to be that route. You know, she wants to kind of be in peace, and she's very what's the word I'm looking for? Loyal to her teammates, which she is, but this doesn't feel like the Domino that we all have known over the years. So that aside, which frustrates the crap out of me, if you just kind of want a good story with some espionage and intrigue and betrayal, then X-Force number 9 is definitely the issue for you. I had fun reading it, was not bored at all, minus the explainer pages, which I wish they would do away with those. But that's just my personal opinion. If you guys have enjoyed this comic book, please first and foremost support your local comic shop and grab a copy. If you've enjoyed this review, we really would appreciate it if you take a moment to hit like, share, and subscribe. Helps the club channel more than you could possibly know. And if you wouldn't mind hitting that fancy little X bell next to subscribe, that way as we continue to upload content, you guys get notified. You can come to the channel, and we love to hear your feedback and talk with y'all down in the comments below or our social media pages, which I'll make sure to leave the links down in the description. So with all that said, thank you so much for stopping by. Hope y'all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, true believers.